Parkinson's law says that work expands so as to fill the time available for its completion, and it's annoyingly true. I'm pretty sure that most games, movies and other media have this period just before release. For my mapping, it tends to be a single day of hardcore, all-out work. I call this final push the crunch period, and I'll be covering the problems Sparity faced in this last stretch in the next video. This video will be mainly about pacing yourself with a large project and making sure that it doesn't balloon into something far larger than you're capable of holding down. Letting your ambition take control of a project is likely the biggest reason for not completing anything. It's too easy to look at completed projects and to assume that the makers are blessed with infinite patience or are somehow cheating in some way. In this video, I'm going to show you how flawed I am as a person. My projects are not perfect, far from it. I still can't pace myself properly and often lack motivation. If you're struggling to complete things, then my advice to you is to start small and to learn every step of the way before applying it to something bigger. I'm in the fortunate position of having several previously completed maps under my belt, and I feel that this has helped me to overcome many of the problems with Sparity, which has been my biggest undertaking so far. So anyway, back to the day before release, where any sense of pacing or respect for tidiness is thrown out of the window and is replaced with messy tweaks and botched adjustments to your project to bring it up to an acceptable standard rather than a desirable one. Welcome to the crunch time. I try to make sure that this day is filled with general detailing and polishing, and usually finish the last time-intensive areas the night before, where I'm slightly more relaxed and can spend the time making smaller parts of the level look good. Without this, the crunch time would be a disaster, as I'd be split between too many areas and simply wouldn't have time to complete it all. If I desperately message anybody on Steam and plead with them to make a bit of the map, then it's probably because I'm in hysteria as the deadline is approaching and the full scale of the project comes crashing down upon me. I'll now show you something that's very private for me. This will show you how disorganised I am and just how terrible I am with deadlines. It's why I try not to announce things before they're finished, since I'm aware that I may not be able to make them in time or even complete them at all. Here are some before and after pictures of my previous projects, the first being from the day before the deadline and the other at 5 minutes to midnight, moments before I meant to submit my map. Elysium's final day changes were fairly substantial. I had to detail some areas from the ground up, I altered the layout, and the entire level had a massive decal pass to add clutter. You'll notice that the lighting makes it fairly pretty even before the detail is added. If you don't get the lighting right, then no amount of props or textures will help. Balfour's was one of the tightest deadlines, especially since I saw the other competition's entrance and realised that I would need to step up my game when it came to detailing. It was a very frantic day, and the deadline was annoyingly close to Christmas. I learned the importance of lighting with this project. Many of the locations were too speckled. With definite light and dark areas, it made people easier to see and makes for better screenshots, as you can see in this final example screenshot, which is the one place that worked properly. Now, Kyrenia was different. I pretty much had it finished a week before and spent that extra time adding clutter and polishing the map. I don't recall much of a crunch time, and it made the project go much smoother. Because of this, I was happy to walk about the map afterwards, knowing that I wouldn't find any game-breaking bugs. With this map, I felt that I had cracked it and would be able to handle future projects with the same degree of pacing and professionalism. Sparity showed me that I couldn't. Most of the map was up to an okay level for competitive play, but I ideally wanted the crunch day to be used for playtesting and bug fixing, but instead I thought it would be a good idea to use it to further detail the level. You'll see that it didn't exactly look bad before, but the additional detail certainly made it look a lot more professional. I hold a belief that decals and other painted on details should be done last minute. It's harder to add props and brushes to an area filled with decals, and I feel that they should be used as an extra, rather than relied upon to make the map look good. With the things I made before that final day, like the factories I wasn't happy with, I always thought that I'd have time to go back and change things. When it comes to the crunch time, my mentality changes. Everything I do has an air of finality to it. I make things knowing that they'll remain that way when people play the map. I find I work best under this sort of pressure and get a lot of difficult areas done in the final day when I have no choice but to work on them. Some of the botched areas and details ended up being the most impressive. It really makes me question if doing things the slow, neat and tidy way is always the best. When making games I was the same. I'd start so organised, splitting bits of code into various segments, but when it reaches the final stages I no doubt add random things anywhere, knowing that I'll never have to go through it and try to make sense of it again. As long as it works, it works. Showing you these things will open me up to attacks. I'm ashamed that I'm so bad at pacing myself with a project. I advise people to spend half the time making something and the later half playtesting and looking for bugs, but then I go ahead and do a 90-10 split with a lot of my projects, and I often pay the price. You think it would be easy, but if you're the sort of person who does homework half an hour before the lesson, or who goes to bed at the latest possible moment to still be able to get up in time, you're likely to fall into the same traps as me. So why do I leave things to the last minute? I suppose ambition is a part of it. If I have a month to make something, I want to make something that takes a month to make, rather than a simpler, less ambitious 2-week project that's polished to oblivion, even though in most situations that 2-week polished project will be better. And I know it even before I start. Then of course, you always overestimate your ability to make things. I do it every single day. I make a to-do list, and by the end of the day I'm about halfway through. I then move the remaining projects onto tomorrow. In a perfect world where I wouldn't make mistakes, I'd manage it, but in reality, things always pop up and screw things over. It doesn't matter how much experience you have. You might hit an unexpected developmental wall where you realise you'll need to spend time remaking part of the level. You might get sidetracked, slipping in the odd 3-minute YouTube video to try and sweeten your mood. Or you might suddenly realise that you have to go to work on the day of the deadline, as well as having to prepare food, shower, and all those other day-to-day activities, in which case it throws everything off and you realise that those misplaced hours could cost you the entire 3-month project. It's a bitter feeling. And then, who's to say anything's ever finished? I could continue to detail the level or change things around to make them more appealing and fun to play. You don't work on a level until it flashes up on the screen, congratulating you for finishing it. It's always a work in progress, and you've just got to draw the line when the law of diminishing returns decides that it's not worth investing more time on it. It's a mixed blessing.